You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 233, Solo, the Final Hype. My name's Albert, the host of the Cantina Cast, and this has been a long-time tradition now. I think this would be the fourth show that we're doing as a Cantina Cast, where we do kind of this hype show just before the big major motion picture. And I'm going to do this tonight with my fellow co-host, and that is Mr. Jonesy. Mr. Jonesy, how are you doing tonight?
Doing excellent, man. I'm super excited. We're in the home stretch here.
Yes, we are recording this as of May 15th, so we are 10 days away from the Solo movie. And I would have to say that the hype is unreal at this point. And I think just before we came on the air, you were kind of talking about how you were pretty excited about it. So maybe how excited would you say you are at this point?
You know, when they started building the Millennium Falcon in New York for the red carpet,
yeah,
I was like, holy smokes, that is awesome. So red carpet aside, just having that presence there was like, yeah, I wish I was there just to see the Falcon and that's about it. But yeah, truly awesome. I mean, we're getting ad after ad thing, TV spot after TV spot, StarWars.com. It's just unreal with the onslaught of information and new videos coming at us. We've almost got to shut it all down now and just say, okay, let's just wait till next week and we'll just see what this thing's all about.
Yeah, and we're getting there too. I mean, it's like, that old adage, what a great time to be alive, given everything that's going on. The point you just made right now, though, yeah, it's you can't go anywhere. Even all of my web pages, everything I visit, everything that's on TV, it's all, my family's talking about, kids are talking about, work's talking about it. So they've done a pretty good job of getting that hype going. And we've been talking about this on the show now, about when it would come and how it would come. And, it's weird. It feels like we're here finally, but it did seem like it took a while before we got anything. And I don't know if that was Disney playing it safe with the Avengers and, other movies that they've got in the works, and just making sure they don't step or, cross over onto any of that stuff and make sure those streams are clean going into each movie. Definitely there's an air about this movie that I would say is maybe a little different. And we'll talk about that here in just a second. So, but yeah, so we've got some news that we're going to get into. And after that, we really wanted this show to kind of fall in line again with the precedence that was set. Was going way back to, what was it? Was it The Last Jedi? No, Force Awakens was the first one they did. Yeah. So Mike and Joa did that. I think they had the guys on there for making Star Wars. Jason and Randy were on that one. They did the Rogue One after that. We had The Last Jedi. And so here we are now going to do one for Solo. So let's get into some quick news. We did want to mention one thing. Mike brought this up today. Tomorrow marks the 7th anniversary of the Cantina Cast. And that just kind of was nuts to me, thinking that it's been 7 years since he kind of laid down, the track, so to speak, or almost literally, I guess, laid down the tracks for this show to go on the air. But yeah, so we thought we'd just make mention of that. I thought it was neat. I started poking around. I thought, well, let me look back about 7 years ago. So this takes us back to 2011. And I thought, what's going on? What was going on in the world of Star Wars back in 2011? I got a couple things here that I'll just share real quick. And then Jonesy, maybe just get your take on them. But so the first one, I had 2011 was the first ever Star Wars Day. So on May 4th, we celebrated in Canada. 2011 was also the same year that the Star Wars saga was finally released on Blu-ray. And I remember that was a big deal. That was a really big deal. Yeah. And that to me just is weird to think it's been 7 years since that thing's been out. And I've still got it. I mean, it just sits there, like a family heirloom sitting over there with the rest of the Blu-rays. I looked at, so that's okay. Well, what about games? What was going on in the gaming world 11 years ago? Star Wars Imperial Academy. I have no idea what this movie is, or this
no idea what that is.
Yeah. So, okay, good. I didn't feel so bad. We had George Lucas still in charge of Lucasfilm. It wouldn't be till 2012 that he would retire. And then obviously to coincide with that, with him kind of retiring and selling off Lucasfilm was when we got the Force Awakens announcement, or at least episode 7, as it would be.
It's hard to believe it's been that long for that too.
Yeah. Yeah. 2011, we also were just coming off of season 3 of the Clone Wars, if you believe that. And going into season 4, that was going to start up in the fall, which was kind of neat too. So yeah, it was just, oh wait, I forgot one big thing. Star Wars: The Old Republic. That was,
there you go.
That was the big thing that Mike, when Mike started the show, and I was talking to him today, literally texting him, begging him to send me something, an audio file, show notes, anything from that very first show. He absolutely refused to. Said it was gone. I told him nothing was ever really truly gone. He didn't like that joke. Said this would be gone. So I didn't get anything from it, but he did say that the show originally, and you guys probably know this if you guys are listeners, but they originally was focused around Star Wars: The Old Republic. And, it's just funny to think that was, he's embarrassed about it. He said, he doesn't like to admit that, but I kind of made him feel better and told him that, hey, I've done some pretty embarrassing things in my life as well. But yeah, it's just weird that that's been that long. And to think where the show started off and I guess where it is today now here with us is it's kind of cool to look back and think about. So any thoughts on that as we celebrate the 7th year of the Cantina Cast?
Yeah, what's interesting is when you look through your podcatcher and you sort back through all the shows over time, the first, I think, 21 shows or something are missing. So that's like the Disney vault, right?
It's the lost episode.
Yeah, it's the original cut of Star Wars before it was A New Hope. So you may never see that special edition unless something insanely weird happens with it. But it is unbelievable when you have a show go on for over 230 episodes. And we talked about this on episode 230 of just how many different discussions have gone on and the different hosts he's had with Brian. And then, of course, him and Joa for so long. And just the amazing conversations they've had. And so it's so awesome that we're able to continue the tradition here for them and carry it to a new place. So, and keep this tradition going on. And hopefully we'll be around to see 10 years.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah. Well, let's hope that gets there. We'll see. I don't know if my wife's going to be happy about that.
Yeah. You didn't see that one coming, did you?
Nope. All right. So let's go on. All right. So I guess going to the real news here. Let's just get it out of the way. Let's talk about Obi-Wan Kenobi. So, Fantha Tracks released as an exclusive, and to quote, it says, in Fantha Tracks exclusive, we can reveal that studio-based pre-production has officially begun on Obi-Wan Kenobi Star Wars movie, and that filming will take place in 2019 for a 2020 release. So sometime in December, they're talking about releasing this. So if you, so this was released again by Fantha Tracks. It was released as kind of being canon. This is official. It's an exclusive. And yet there was a lot of debate. And I know some of those folks over at Fantha Tracks are great people. Don't get me wrong. I actually really enjoy them. And I didn't really kind of search out the validity of this thing in it whatsoever. I just didn't really care. And we're going to talk about it here just because we're not a newscast. We are a podcast. We talk about this stuff just like fans do. So please don't start putting the bad reviews, because last time we brought it up, a few people were started trolling and saying that we were talking about stuff that we didn't need to be talking about because it was news and it wasn't validated. I don't care. We're fans. It's out there. We're talking about it as fans. But so this is probably no big secret. I mean, this is stuff that we've been talking about, that this movie's been in the works even years back. This has always been the case. But do you feel like we got some solid evidence here now? Do you think this is enough for you to say, yep, it's going to happen, and now it's just a matter of waiting?
It seems like where there's smoke, there's fire. And what's not helping, what's helping fuel the fire is that Ewan McGregor was at the premiere, right? And so that was, I don't know, some folks viewed that as a little unusual. Why would he be there? But he is a Star Wars alum. I mean, George Lucas was there as well. So it wouldn't be...
Dressed nicely.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, looking good. And so, especially when he was at Costco before. Picture that Albert Costco posted on social media there for you. But yeah, so it seems like this is going... We know that there's another... They wanted to have 3 of these anthology movies. Kenobi continues to surface. And so... It's kind of a why not, or what other direction would they go? Ewan McGregor's name keeps popping up. So there was another article on Reddit too that seemed to corroborate this story, but it was very, very vague. So it's difficult to say that was, actually corroborating it in an official manner. So it's difficult. These are always well-placed sources, and I'm using my finger quotes here so it's difficult to say, but Fantha Tracks, well-respected website, usually have good information. So Gonna chalk this one up that this is a high probability now.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. So I guess we'll just see. We'll wait. If it happens, it happens. And if it doesn't, that's okay too. Either way. All right, so let's talk about, speaking of the red carpet and Solo's premiere, which happened, was that last week? Yeah, last
10th,
week.
Yep.
John Favreau was there, and they caught him in a red carpet interview. And it was there that he kind of, I guess, I don't know if you want to call it a leak, but he definitely, broke the news that the television series he's working on would take place 7 years after the Battle of Yavin. So that would place it about 3 years
Somewhere
after
in there,
Return of the Jedi.
Yep.
Yeah. So what do you think about that? Interesting prospects there with the timeline?
It makes sense. The original report was after Return of the Jedi, which was a little more ambiguous because when 7 years after that movie has come out, there's a lot of different things that could have gone on and where you go. So this one seems, that suggests to me that this is more of a direct pickup of the remnants of the Empire and some of those type of stories. So we'll see where it goes from there. But what did you think? What does that era look like for you?
As long as what I would really like to see is, I actually don't know that I really want to see a whole lot of rebellion here or whatever they're calling themselves at that point, because that all could change too. I'm not saying that it's not going to be, but I would like to see more focus on the Empire and how dismantled they are, and the remnants and Operation Cinder and all this stuff that we got from even like from the game, right? And the Emperor's backup plans, and you've got all these people that are splintered now, and that to me always seemed like the most interesting story when we're, not to talk about the game because that's not really what we're here to talk about, but Battlefront 2, that single player storyline, that was a really intriguing piece of it. And that's why I really latched on to, Janaina's character, drawing a blank now. Iden Versio. Yeah. So that was the most compelling piece to me. And I'd like to see more of that. I would like to see what that side was like. And then just the struggles of that.
Another avenue that could go is, now that you have this fractured empire and maybe not a New Republic set up yet, they could explore this underworld bounty hunter ridden galaxy now, where you have this, what's the word I'm looking for? Or anarchy almost, where there's lawlessness. And so it's ripe for gangsters and these types of things. The same types of things that looks like we're going to get a little bit of in Solo. You could have this underground 1313, to use the video game, this type of world that we could explore, and it be out, parallel to whatever else is going on in the main, saga line.
Yeah, I would. There's another aspect of Star Wars that I don't know how interesting it would be for people to watch. It's interesting to me, but I've always seen, I guess, the Empire, even as bad as they were. Right, they were the galaxy infrastructure, and what's happened now is you've ripped that out, and I want to see what happens now to these other worlds. Like, because there's got to be people that are, living earnest lives, but at the expense of the Galactic Empire, and now you've pulled that from them. So what does that do to them? What does it do to their families? What does it do to, job security and all that stuff? And what's the ripple effect of ripping even something as horrible as the Empire was? Again, they were structured. They were the infrastructure for the galaxy, and you've completely ripped that out. So what's all the repercussions of that? I think, to me, even if it's, and I'm not even talking just about the Empire, but I'm talking about just the average day, characters in Star Wars land and what that's life is like afterwards. I really would like to see them go into that, because it almost give you some, I don't want to say sympathy for the Empire, but certainly sympathy for those characters that were relying on, riding the coattails of something that was successful, like the Galactic Empire. So anyways, that's kind of my thoughts there. Any final thoughts on the TV series and what to expect?
Last thing I have is, if we remember, this was what George Lucas really wanted to do. He really wanted a live action Star Wars TV show. And it was always cost prohibitive of being able to do that. And so it's exciting to see something that he was so interested in doing, and to see where it actually goes now. So this is still a ways off, but it's just exciting to be able to, we're actually going to see this. It's actually going to happen. This world of Netflix inspired TV shows and things like that are enabling all of these other genres and all these other shows that would have been unable to do this to actually take a chance and do it, because people are supporting that consumption of media that way. So it's really exciting to be able to see that.
Yeah, I can't wait. This is very exciting, and I mean that in all sincerity. So, okay, so just two more things. So next up, we got so again, we're recording this on May 15th, and I think in the last show we mentioned that today was the day that they were going to lift the review ban. So the reviews are coming out. We're still getting early numbers, early figures. I think, Jonesy, you mentioned this morning there really wasn't a whole lot there. Is that right?
Yeah, nothing that I was saying. I wasn't looking real close, but
yeah. And then here we are now. So, late in the evening, and we've got, there's a pretty good mix of them. And I would say overall, at least for now, seems pretty positive. I think it definitely aligns with what we were seeing from the reaction stuff that we were getting after the red carpet. We saw some of that. Everyone was talking about how, fun was the word that was just overly used to talk about Solo. And we're certainly seeing that in the reviews themselves. We're not going to get into them because I don't want to spoil anything here. But, overall, I would say it seems pretty positive, and it seems like a lot of people have been pretty happy with it. I think the other word that I've seen a lot of is safe.
Sure.
Whether you take that as positive or negative, safe is a word that keeps coming up in a lot of these reviews. So, kind of what you expected in terms of the reviews based on what you saw coming out of the reaction shows or the reaction stuff coming from the red carpet?
Yeah, this is about what I expected. We're a tough fandom to please. So either it's too safe or it goes too far or whatever it might be, but it's got to strike the right tone. We've talked about this a number of times. It's got to strike the right tone. Fun is an important element of this movie because Han Solo is a fun, semi-ridiculous character at times of what he gets himself into and how he gets himself out of it. So those types of things, if they capture that spirit, that's going to work for a lot of people, and others will maybe roll their eyes at it. So, but we'll see how it translates for our viewership and then our community here and see how well that works. But this is about what I expected. And they're not going to take a lot of chances with this movie, I don't think. So, but yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. Okay, and the last thing we've got to talk about news related is, so we've been plugging this. We are doing a Cantina Cast get-together. I think we're calling this Keep CC Weird or Keep Cantina Cast Weird. I don't know, one of those two. And it's a play on if you've ever been to Austin or seen anything, there's stickers everywhere that say Keep Austin Weird because it's kind of a weird city.
It's a very culturally interesting city. Yeah.
And culturally diverse city. Yeah, it's kind of like an oasis compared to in the midst of a lot of the other cities that are around here in Texas. Very conservative, and that's where you've got Austin, and they're very different. But anyway, so we're kind of calling that. So this is June 16th. We've talked about doing some kind of get together before the Solo movie, and then doing something afterwards. I want to thank Imperial Moonwalker. He's done a lot of work to get this kind of going. He's kind of running with it. So he's got a couple questions out to us, some final decision points, and I think we should have a sign-up sheet, I think within the next week. Yeah, pretty safe to say we'll get that out there.
Yeah, we really want this out here. By the time this episode drops, it should be out there. And again, to kind of recap, we're gonna do a viewing of the movie. We think that's probably going to be at the Alamo Draft House. So if you haven't been to the Draft House and you're in the area, it's a great fun experience. We're going to do a before and after event. So we can have time to engage about going in before it and then kind of recap how we're doing after that and just enjoy each other's company for a while and see where it takes us from there. So,
yeah. And I've heard some people are flying in, which is crazy because my family won't even fly in for me. So I'm humbled to think that people would actually fly in to meet, us.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. That's really exciting though too. So, so far we've got some nice interest going so far. So anybody that's interested, we're going to get that out to you. We'll put it in the social media. We'll definitely have it in Discord as well. If you have any questions, certainly shoot us an email or reach out to us in any way, and we'll make sure that we respond and get you what you need.
Good deal. All right. So let's move into our main show. And I think we're going to start off with just kind of some quick fire discussions around, let's talk, we kind of already talked about the first one. So we thought we'd maybe start with talking about the hype of the movie compared to Rogue One. And what would you say if you were to gauge that level of hype right now? Where do you think that would be aligned with Rogue One? Or even we could even take this and look at like The Last Jedi or The Force Awakens. Do you think it's comparable in any way?
I think it's actually higher than Rogue One, at least for me personally. We talked a little about earlier, the slow burn on getting this thing ready, and it had a lot of similarities with Rogue One, I think, because it was riddled with some controversy or a lot of uncertainty, and it got really quiet at times to where we didn't know what was going on. And but now it has just exploded. I think the hype is, at least what we're hearing in our circles, seems to be much greater than Rogue One. Rogue One was kind of a bit of a surprise hit, I think, to some of us, maybe not to everybody, but I thought it was a bit of a surprise hit in that regard. But I think Solo's actually eclipsed it now. Again, it's a recognizable character. So folks that are a fan of the saga have someone to latch on to. I don't know that this is going to have that same hype as a saga film, though. TFA, oh no way. And even Last Jedi had a lot building up to it, because a lot of that social interaction that like Ron Howard's done, Rian Johnson was doing that as well. And they just had all these types of events. But the weird thing, though, is just this really long lead in to when the U.S. gets to see this movie from the first time it's debuted.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think for me that it does feel different. I'm going to say it feels bigger than, it feels bigger than Rogue One. And to your point, we've got recognizable characters. We've got, the level of engagement from the directors, and all that.
And we know some things that are going to get touched on in this movie when we didn't really know what Rogue One was going to explore.
Yeah, Rogue One was kind of a mystery box.
Yeah.
Right? And we had a basic premise, but there's some very obvious things here, and there's some very obvious things that we didn't know we were going to get, that we are still waiting to hear, what's going to happen or how it plays out. I'm trying to avoid spoilers. It's going to be very difficult. But yeah, I would definitely say it's more than what I was feeling with Rogue One. Probably not the same as The Last Jedi, though. I think that one was, again, that's a saga movie, so can't really compare it to that. But yeah, it's all good stuff. And we're going into the summer. It doesn't look like there's a whole lot. You've got Deadpool coming out this weekend. Beyond that, I think it's really
Incredibles comes out in June. I think that's the next Disney Pixar type movie. So
it's got a pretty good runway here, a pretty decent runway, I should say that, for it to kind of just stand out there on its own, do well as a summer movie, and put a smile on everybody's face, which I think is, again, going back to what we're seeing in the reviews and the reaction stuff. It definitely looks like it's going to do that for you. So the other thing we wanted to talk about, just before we get to the listener questions and the feedback that we got, was just kind of talking about our journey with this movie and where we were. So I was, obviously I was not part of the show when this announcement was made. Was a fan, much like everyone listening today, just listening to the show. Here Mike and Joe talk about it. And I think when it was announced, I don't know that I was a little skeptical, probably like most people were, just because they were going to be touching Han Solo. And, the first thing that comes to mind is, okay, well, it's got to look like Han Solo. At least for me, these are my initial reactions. Sorry, I'm not saying this is where I'm at today, but my initial reactions were, okay, whoever it is has to be Han Solo. And how do you do that? How do you get somebody? They tried it, going back to like Indiana Jones and
who on
River
earth
Phoenix
would do that? Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And here they go. They're going to try to do it again. So I was a bit skeptical. I figured, I was a big fan of those Brian Daley novels. So I always thought, well, there's probably some good content there. I was never one that thought they couldn't put together a good story. And as things kind of played out and we started getting, the Kazdans were involved, and Lloyd and Miller were involved. There were a lot of things that were kind of falling in place for me where I thought, okay, yeah, this is working. It's going to be fine. It's just going to be okay. And then we had the director's fallout. And for me, that was a little jarring. That was like a red flag. I'm not going to lie. I started thinking, oh boy, the bottom's going to fall out here on this movie. And I did feel better once Ron Howard was brought in. Huge Ron Howard fan.
I was beside myself though. Like when
because he would do it.
Well, when his name was even surfacing, I thought, no way, this is just fan service. Like they're not really looking into this. This is someone got a crazy idea, because usually you don't have I don't know. It doesn't seem like you have a big name guy or gal come in and do these types of things when the bottom has fallen out. I mean, no, granted, no one better to probably come and pick up the pieces or, potentially the pieces there. but I just didn't believe it at first. I was like, there's no way that Ron Howard's going to do this. He's Ron freaking Howard.
Right. And there was a part of me that I guess the skeptic in me was starting to think this is so bad that they need to get somebody in here that, you know, is going to be able to kind of take the fall, right? If the movie tanks, then, you know, is it really going to blemish his record? No, not at all, right?
Yeah, so he'll move on.
To me, that
he'll move on.
Yeah, he'll move on just fine, right? So that was kind of my, I guess, skeptic reaction when Ron Howard was brought in. And then as it kind of went through and people were talking about how, you know, open he was, how honest he was, how sincere he was, you know, the number of reshoots and his dedication and, you know, trying to see through the vision and all that. And, you know, we know that he was, you know, kind of born and raised reared by George Lucas, so to speak, with regards to being a director and what he did with Willow and American Graffiti. I mean, all that legacy there really just started kind of putting me at ease, and I just kind of took it for what it was. It was somebody that was coming in that was a fan of the movie, he was a fan of George Lucas, a friend of George Lucas, and, you know, this is an opportunity for him to do something that I think he'd always wanted to do. I think he's made that comment before, you know, back a long time ago when Lucas was, you know, toying with the idea of getting different directors for the original trilogy. His name had come up. And so this was, you know, an opportunity for him to do that again. So I guess all that to say that I'm in a pretty happy place with the movie, especially, you know, again, given what we've seen with reactions and the reviews. I think I'm all right. I'm pretty excited about the movie, and I'm just going to roll with it and take it for what it is. I'm not going in expecting, you know, anything that I expected from The Last Jedi or The Force Awakens or even Rogue One for that matter.
Yeah, I'm there with you.
Anyways.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think when the movie was announced and most of the lead up into it, it was really low on my area of concern. I wasn't really interested. I was more in that camp of, why do we have to explore this character? Why can't we do something different or something new?
Yeah.
And get out of this world. And then when the directors left, the bottom fell out. I mean, I basically wrote the movie off as well. I mean, I'm a bad Star Wars fan, I guess, but I just like, this is just, everything about this is just going wrong. And at some point it started to flip around. And the moment that they did that trailer with the soundtrack and the music and the guitars, that different flavor, I instantly like lit up and stood up straight. I was like, okay, well, we're going to get something familiar, but are we going to get that twist on it? Are we actually going to get it? I know the music with trailers is not necessarily indicative of what's going to be in the movie. We saw that with Last Jedi, but it just perked me up of like, okay, this has got the right tone. It's got the right feel. They're striking the right, you know, rhythm a bit. And so we'll see how that plays out in the movie, but it was almost overnight for me switching over. And ever since then, I haven't been able to get enough of it. And this is really odd for me. I don't usually get super excitable about this type of stuff. Even with Star Wars, I'm usually pretty even keel. But this one's got me really, really amped up. Not where I've overset my expectations, but just to the point where I'm ready to go have fun, and I'm ready to see what they do. And I'm actually ready to see what they're going to do with Han. And if they change stuff, I want to see how it plays out and see where it goes. And I think we've got a couple questions in that regard as well.
Yeah. So let's do that. Let's get into the questions. So what we've been doing is kind of soliciting feedback and questions in a couple of different manners, whether it was social media, email, and then we threw some stuff out in our Discord channel. So as usual, our Patreon members came through for us on a lot of these questions. In fact, I think we had to weed some of this stuff out. So we're going to try to get through everything tonight. I think we've got about 30 minutes if we're shooting for about an hour here. So we should be able to get through all of these. But let's just so let me just say one real quick disclaimer. So if you guys have listened to the show, you know I am into spoilers. And going into this movie, 10 days away, there's very little I don't know about the movie at this point. So I'm going to try my best honestly, Jonesy, I think what I'm going to do is we may just have you answer the questions. Okay. And then the ones where I just do not know sincerely, I think I'll chime in. Otherwise, I'll probably just say next question. So,
okay.
Because I don't want to spoil this for anybody.
Yeah, we want to protect our listeners as much as me, I guess.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I've been on the other thing. I've been resisting the spoilers because I know how much Albert and Mike love getting into this, and they had such a great time with the Last Jedi discussion and things like that. And I was like, man, I want to do that, but God, I got to get through this podcast before I can do any of that stuff. So I can actually answer these questions with a straight, honest face. So thanks for throwing that out there and being honest about it.
Yeah, no, I don't want to. Yeah, because I don't want to come across as like, oh, well, I think this is going to happen, and then it does because I know
you are Nostradamus. Yeah.
All right, so let's get into it. So Utini. Original worry was at Han Solo and the origin of everything, but after trailers, he wants to see all of the origin stuff except maybe the blaster. His question is, what minutia origin story would be too far for us? In other words, what would they show us that's just like, okay, we don't need to see that? And I'll let you take the first crack at this.
Sure, this is a tough one because I was right there with you, Tini, because I did not want to see the origin of everything. I think I've been on record on this podcast of saying I don't want to see the origin of everything, but it looks like we're gonna. But as of right now, the way that they've started shaping things up, I think I might be okay with pretty much everything they're doing. I don't know what is going to be too far. I started to think, what have they not told us that they haven't already showed us on screen that looks like they're going to get a little flavor of? Maybe the Corellian blood stripes, the pants. But even then, I'm start thinking through what we know about the story. I'm like, okay, well, maybe we'll get that too. And I might be okay with that. I don't think we're going to see things like Battle of Tanab and some of these other little things that we got throughout Empire and Jedi with Lando and Han. I think some of that might still be alluded to, or might be more in the maybe what's to come arena. But is there anything that seems too far for you, Albert?
Well, I think we talked about this on one of the shows, and we made the joke about the pants, or I don't really want to know about his boots. I don't want to know about his scar. Don't need to tread in that territory.
The scar would be too much. Yeah, the scar would be too much, I think.
The vest is another thing. Like, I don't want that to be just a vest that somehow he ends up with as a costume, and then he just kind of dones it, and that becomes his look. I don't want anything like that. I mean, that seems all kind of superficial, and it seems like that would be too far for me. That said, I think the temptation is too great, especially with a character like Han Solo, that I think we probably are going to get something that maybe crosses the line or goes too far. And this is a question I don't have. I don't know the spoiler here at all, honestly, but my guess is, again, the temptation just seems like it's too much. And I think they've hinted at too much in the trailers that I would not expect us to get something that, goes a little too far here. So, yeah, I guess if I drew the line, the clothing articles, his haircut, stuff like that, I really don't. It's just, don't do it. So, okay, Imperial Moonwalker. What are the triggers for Lucasfilm to turn this into a trilogy or franchise? Is it a financial figure? Is it critical fan acclaim? Something else? What's your answer here?
I think it's going to be a mix. I think this is going to be one of those things where the critic reaction, and in particular the fan, the feeling of the fan reaction. So if you use Last Jedi, the fan reaction was very mixed. And so if we get that, it would be difficult for them to have a follow-up movie. But if it tends to lean positive, if it leans wildly positive like Rogue One was, then I think it's a given, because if that happens, the money will follow. If it doesn't follow, if it's somewhere in between, that's a really tough question. I don't know what this movie is going to make money. It will cover its budget worldwide, and it's going to be fine. But I don't know if it has to be astronomically huge in order for it to get a sequel, if the fan is there. And I'd love to be able to quantify that number, but we're going to touch on figures a little bit later. But I think for it to be the absolute minimum, I'm thinking you got to have about somewhere like a 70% positive fan reaction. Critic reaction, I think they're less concerned with, because critics don't always get movies like this. And then the dollar figure, I think domestically, you're probably going to have to be at a bare minimum 400 to 500 million, I think. What do you, is that on par with what you might think, or is it way far off?
I would agree. And I would agree with all the sentiments really about, I think it's just going to go down. It's going to come down to the fan reaction and the critics to some extent, but not much. I mean, we've seen plenty of other movies and other franchises where, they don't do well. They're in the, sub 50% in terms of reviews, and even they crank out another 2 or 3 sequels. It all depends on who's got pocketbooks and how much, deep desire they have to kind of keep that going. I think for this movie though, I don't know that there's a really high bar for whether or not we're going to get a sequel. I think, like you said, the money's already there, so you can just get that out of the way. They're going to make money on this thing. It looks like we've got the fan reaction. in place. It looks like we're getting the reviews already. To me, it seems like a no-brainer. I think it's a done deal. We'll probably get another movie from this at some point, and maybe even a third movie from it. So, because once you make one and you commit to that second one, the second one can go either way. If it's bad, then you say, well, we did well with the first one. Let's try the third one. And if it does well, then you say, look, we've got two under our belt. Let's try the third one. So that third one almost always gets in there, regardless if it does well or does bad. So, I think we're in for this a sequel, obviously, at this point, given what we've seen so far.
Yep, good question, Imperial. Thanks.
Yeah, it was a good question. All right, so JW, Infus Nest, person or title? And I'm going to let you.
Oh, of course you are. I don't know. I'm going to go with person. I like the idea of the title, and we've had a lot of discussions in Discord about this, where this is a mantle that gets passed on. The look is there for that type of ceremonial passing of the torch, if you will. But I'm going to go with this as a person. And the reason why I'm going to say that, if this is truly a gang, usually gangs don't have a mantle to really pass on in that regard. Well, maybe they do. I don't know a lot about gangs, I guess. But this is great radio time. Let me tell you.
Yeah, I don't know anything about gangs either. Especially not space.
Yeah, I know
gangs.
Space gangs are called Cloud Riders. What's a Cloud Rider?
Riders.
I'm going to go with person though.
Person. Final answer.
Final answer. Person. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to pass this question. So let's talk. Let's get to Cab's question. So he's got a really solid, deep, thought-provoking question. Do you hope that Solo will cover Life Day since it's not canon?
Oh, God. Leave it to Cab. We give Cab such a hard time in Discord that we deserve this question.
Yeah, we do. Thank you, Cab.
So are we going to get Life Day, Albert?
We're not going to get Life Day.
Is that a spoiler, Albert?
And I can confirm with you right here now on this day, Life Day is not in the movie. So sorry, I had to spoil something.
Oh, man.
That was it.
We are going to get some hashback for that one.
Feedback. Here it comes. Yep. You had to ruin it. It's going to be from Cab himself.
We love you, Cab.
All right. And here's another good friend of the show, Stargate Pioneer. Will R2D2 make an appearance?
Yes. Absolutely, yes. I think C-3PO will make an appearance too.
Oh, wow. All right.
Always do.
So I don't know the answer to this one, so I will take a stab at this one. I'm going to say yes. I think it's going to be one of these chopper scenes, though, where it's kind of subtle. Maybe you got to look at it. It doesn't come out immediately, and you get it on home release and you freeze frame it, you can see it. It could very well be the one that we've talked about that was in the trailer, right? We know there was an RT unit in one of the early trailers, right. And that got, scrutinized like the Zapruder film when it was released. So that could be it. Maybe it's that, or maybe it's an extension of that scene, or a different cut of that scene, or a different shot of that scene, and that's where we get him in there. But I've always really liked the idea that R2, that all of these stories were from R2's perspective, as been discussed here on the show. So in order for that to happen, we'd have to have him in here in some way. So I'm hoping that he is in there. I'm praying actually that he's going to be.
I think so. I mean, there's one constant in these movies. It's R2D2.
Yep. And arms and legs getting severed.
Not so much anymore, right? We haven't seen it in a couple movies.
Yeah. And I guess we'll see if there's any Force type stuff for people in this movie.
That's interesting. This might be the first movie where we might see zero Force abilities on display. So,
yep. Maybe. Yeah. I won't say. All right. Let's go to Paul Dameron's question. Another good friend of the show, Paul Dameron. What crossovers would we like to see? Let's take that first one.
I'm gonna let you start that one because this is kind of a tough one to think through.
This one is tough. I'd like to see maybe some Clone Wars here, or maybe something substantial from Rebels. I was thinking about this even prior, and I think there's another question that's out here that's specifically about Rebels. So I think it was from Lucid Truth. So I'm gonna apologize in advance for kind of covering kind of two questions at once. But Lucid Truth had asked whether or not we'd see any Rebels characters or any kind of crossover there. But I was trying to remember where
the timeline's important here too.
Yeah, so I was thinking about Callus though, because Callus came in, he would have been probably a little bit older. Well, yeah, no, he would have been about 10 years older. I don't know. I don't have the math in front of me right now, but just based on what I know and from the timelines, he would have been older. But it would be kind of neat to see, some kind of just cameo of him in there.
Right.
maybe he's just, just ancillary character, or he's just a new recruit that's getting his butt chewed out by somebody. That would be interesting to see. But yeah, Clone Wars, I guess, or something from Rebels would be really neat to have them thread into this movie, and it would be a good tribute to those two series and what they did.
Yeah,
so.
I kept thinking who would actually be old enough to not be a kid, because this is still roughly 10 years before Rebels too, right? Or 7-8 years before Rebels.
Yeah.
So some of the characters who would be way too young. Ezra, absolutely not. But I think you're onto something with the Imperial side. If we were to see one, Callus would be, I think, a really good one, because he'd probably be in his 20s, because I'm assuming he's probably in his 30s, early 30s or something in Rebels. Right. Sloane's another one that has had a lot of chatter. Discord really happy or really excited about anything with Sloane.
Well, and that's her. She's like always coming up in everything, right? Because of her character. And it's an amazing character, and we don't get anything outside of the, the comic book. So yeah, it would be good to finally throw a bone there for her.
Yep. And then, I mean, you could always have Thrawn. I mean, Thrawn's around in this time too, right?
Yep.
But beyond that, I don't know that we would see anyone else. Kanan, maybe. I mean, like you said, maybe you'd have some holdovers from the Clone Wars that just make an appearance, depending on what's going on. But that seems a bit of a stretch to actually see who they are. That would be more of a background cameo you wouldn't be able to see, I think. So, but yeah, that's a really tough question, though. Good one, Paul. But he's got more. Wait, there's more.
He's got more. Validity to Solo 2 rumors.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about that one.
Yeah, I mean, there's
nothing.
It's all contingent upon them.
Yeah, there's nothing confirmed. They're not hinting at anything right now. They're just taking the movie and see where it goes. But yeah, all signs point to most likely.
Yeah, and I mean, in our professional lives, anytime we do anything like this and we're taking a chance or doing something that's, we're not sure how it's going to play out, we always try to think a few, feet ahead of us or whatever, a few steps ahead of us, so that we have contingency plans. So my guess is Disney's no different. And some people think we give them too much credit that they spend all day and night thinking about contingencies. And I'm sorry, but that's kind of what they do, right? Yeah. They've got to plan all this stuff out. There's tons of timelines. They're trying to coincide. I mean, it's a big machine, and they're not thinking like we do where, oh, what movie's coming out here in the next couple of months? No, they're thinking they've got, 5-year, 10-year projections sometimes, depending on what they're talking about at the IP. So you've got to think that for this movie and for all of the movies in the franchise, coming up and certainly ones that they've not disclosed, they've got a lot of different plans, and they've got contingencies that say, if it does this, then go here. If this happens, we go this way, we go that way. It's just good business, right? And Disney didn't get where they are today by not doing those kinds of things.
And they want to maximize their investment. They want their money to be well spent and to get the best return that it can get. And these movies are the closest thing to a guaranteed return, at least as of right now, that you can expect. So yeah, we get all of the ancillary material, the books and those good things, but the movies are where they're going to make all, a big chunk of their money all at once. And then they get the follow-up on the sales of the Blu-rays and the DVDs. So yeah.
And then his final question is, any fears that this movie will break existing canon? So those fears, I think, are pretty legit. Sure. And it's, you always worry about that kind of stuff when they start, especially when, well, not because they always do this, because this is really the first time, but, again, they're messing with Han Solo and the backstory and storylines and all that. You got to really kind of worry that they are going to break something.
Well,
I don't know.
I'd like to clarify. I don't like to use the word break.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay. I mean, some of this is just a reimagining, to use more of a Disney type of term. It's just a slightly different take on some of it. And I don't always see it as a true break. And I think some of those are the easier ones we have to grab onto, where they've just, shaped it a little bit different. It's a little more malleable, but it doesn't actually, break canon. And to bring up the comic book series, when, what's her name? Sana Stars showed up. I'm the wife of Han Solo. Spoiler if you haven't read the Star Wars flagship comic 2 years ago, whatever it was. But that was kind of canon breaking right there. But they walked it back that said, well, no, not really, kind of thing. So we don't have to. I'm a little worried that they're going to do some things that will take a little getting used to. I don't know that I'm worried about them breaking anything. it might reshape the way we think about a character because we've thought that this was the way it was forever and ever in our head. But, we know that they're doing different things now. So some of this is we've just got to get ourselves there that this isn't going to be the same thing we've known for the last 20, 30, 40 years.
Yeah, the story group, we haven't really talked about them much at all. That's their whole lot in life is to ensure that this stuff doesn't break. And I think they do a pretty good job of walking that line, kind of like what you were saying. Well, nothing's really technically broke. However, it's just a little different spin on it, or it's a different take, or it's not exactly how you maybe thought it was going to based on, what was previously disclosed kind of thing. So I think they do a fair job there, whether you like them or not. I just can't see them allowing something to actually, be broke, like completely severed. I think it's just a different take on a different spin. And then going back to this movie, if it's fun and safe is what we're hearing, then that just kind of signs point that I don't think we're going to see anything major.
Like I said, I think we're going to see it with we're going to see it with the dice. I think we're going to get a different spin on that. That's one of my guesses.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Okay, so we got Blackjack. Blackjack, Beckett's line about betrayal. He believes someone on the crew will betray them to the Empire or other group. Might get someone killed. Maybe it begins Han's jadedness. He wants to know our opinion on this. Is this where we're going to start seeing some of that Solo type behavior?
I definitely think so. And when they say things like that and they show them in the trailer, they always happen. And this seems par for Han's course. And Ron Howard has come out and said this is Han's journey to a point closer to where we see him in A New Hope. So not all the way there, which goes back to your Solo 2 rumors of a follow-up. But it's the idea that he is Solo, for lack of a better word, pun not intended, for a reason, and he only depends on himself for a reason. And so everything is pointing to, yes, someone is going to betray him. They've got a line in the movie talking about it. So I think this is in your, if we were to do percentages like the guys used to do, this seems to be a 100% going to happen type of thing. It's more who is going to do this, which I think we have a question here in just a minute to talk about.
Yeah, and I think along those same lines, I don't even think it's a matter of whether or not someone's going to be betrayed. I'm actually thinking that we're going to have several threads of betrayal, right? Different aspects or different levels of it. And so, because it is a heist movie, and generally speaking, if it fits that genre, there's going to be a lot of backstabbing and people, things you didn't see come in and that sort of thing.
And we get that flavor between Han and Lando at Empire, right? When him and
right.
I'm sure he's forgotten about that,
Yeah, right. They set the seeds there to kind of give you some insight into just how shifty some of these characters are in that little world.
We're great friends until it doesn't align with what I need to get done right now.
Yep. Frenemies is
there. You go.
It's normal use. All right. So Bread from Discord, does Kira have to die in this or any potential Han Solo sequel since Han doesn't mention her in the original trilogy, or does a falling out suffice? Seems strange Han never mentions her.
Well, this is tough to say he mentions her just because we're plugging in the backstory now. I don't think she has to die at all. In fact, I would much rather she live because, I think any sequels would be more interesting in that regard. We don't need Han to be the way he is because someone died. I'd much rather, Kira betray him or something like that that says, this is what happens. And then he goes off the handle and shuts down and starts to treat everyone kind of poorly, or maybe even that's how he treats women more in that regard because of this one instance. But no, I don't think that. I'd rather see a falling out than anything else, that they have a falling out or something happens where she switches side. I mean, Jonesy spoilers here of like my belief system, not of what I know. Like she looks like an Imperial through and through to me. So that's where my money's at right now. She's got the look of an Imperial. She's way too put together to not be Imperial. So that's kind of where I'm going with it on the what happens scale.
Yeah. And I am not going to answer that.
Oh, man.
All right. Next question. Any Rebels character appearances or original trilogy Rebels?
Right. Yeah, Lucid Truth. We got this one a little bit earlier, I think.
Yeah. So I mentioned Callus. Honestly, it would be cool to see some kind of snippet, from the Rebels, or at least the onset of the Rebels. I don't know. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that would be
I'm kind of on board with
interesting to
Callus.
see it.
I'd like to see that one. His character really, I enjoyed it after a while.
Yeah. Becca, lifelong friend of the Cantina cast. What does Han and Kira's relationship do for Han's character? Does this change or forge the man we know in the original trilogy? And I think it's really, part of it. I don't think, kind of like what you said, and I think we've mentioned this before. I don't think this is it. I don't think we're going to get everything that we know of Han Solo going into Episode 4 happens in this movie. I think it's just the beginnings of that. I think we'll see a character that's, fun and happy, and we've already seen it in the trailers where he's positive and not thinking about the bad things, or not having bad feelings about these kinds of things. I think we get to all that, but I think there's still more story here to be told with him that gets us to the point where he does feel a little bit jaded, and is certainly only looking out for himself, apart from Chewie. But I think really outside of Chewie, I think he, going into Episode 4, that character is probably going to be developed over the course of 1, 2, 3 movies, however many they do. So I don't think she's going to get all the credit. I think we'll probably see other characters in and out of his life that are going to all contribute.
Right.
To
And I think this is going to be more in that forge category, because we see him with a facade in some of the trailers already, and she sees right through it. So clearly it looks like when they're doing the races and things like that, that looks like a flashback type of sequence. They both look younger, different hairstyles, all that good stuff. So it definitely seems like he's already got a certain facade, and we're going to see those experiences. I'm very much in the camp that this is going to forge the man we know. It's not going to retcon or change what we already know about Han in the original trilogy. I think this is just going to build that up and support it and just fill in some of those gaps for us. And like Ron Howard said, it's not going to take us all the way up to the man we know or have known for the last 40 years. It's going to bring us closer to that point, but not quite all the way.
Yeah. And then our final question is from Ryan Patterson. This came in via fan mail, Gmail, which I didn't share this with you, Jones. He had some really nice things to say about us and kind of taking the torch and what Mike's done and all that. So thank you so much, Ryan, for all the good feedback there. But he had a couple good questions here. So the first one is, what particular aspect of the movie are you most interested to see or most nervous about? Ooh, you want to take that one first?
Well, yeah, thanks for letting me have the hard ones here. Goodness. Most interested to see. I think I really want to see Han and Lando like everybody else.
Yep. That's mine too.
I mean, it's the one that we've had hints at since Empire, and we definitely see the relationship that they have, especially in Jedi. And so, we didn't get to see any of that in the sequel trilogy. So now it's like, okay, how did they get there? What does that look like? How did Han steal the ship? There's so much there within that relationship. Second to that, it's still got to go to like Han and Chewie then. So that's what I've got to see next, because how do you form this lifelong friendship? What is the life death all about? What's the catalyst for that? What are their misadventures, right? So just all these different interesting things. And it sounds like you're agreeing on the interested side. So should we go to the nervous side?
Yeah, the interested side, I would agree 100%. And a lot of that just is kind of for selfish reasons. I mean, there's plenty of other characters that are, interesting. L337 looks pretty interesting. Dryden Voss, I want to know just how bad of a bad he really is.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
I don't know. Those are all very interesting things, but again, it's, if I'm getting a Han Solo movie, let's get that out of the way first, and then I'll look at the other stuff as kind of seconds. But in terms of what I'm most nervous about, I think I'm more nervous about what we've talked about earlier with regards to giving us too much minutia, giving us too much background. And that, a lot of that, again, is just from the trailers and what we've seen and know already in terms of what they're going to explain. I don't need everything explained. It would be cool to see some things, but I don't need everything. And if you're going to do it, I would like them to do it just in very subtle ways, right? Do the stuff that, maybe not the blue milk in Rogue One, because that was still, even though it was subtle, the fact that you had the camera,
it was like front and center
zooming in on, right? It was like, hey, look, it's blue milk kind of thing. That if they had just left it on the table and not even had the camera moving, I think that would have been just perfect for me. But stuff like that, right? Where it's there, but unless you're looking for it, you don't know that it's there kind of thing. I don't mind those things so much, but if we're going to get into, like I said, Han pants and Han vest and scars. And that's what I'm kind of nervous that we're going to go there. So
I'm more nervous about the villain. And so to kind of go back to your point, we've got Enfys Nest, we have Dryden Voss. So which one's the true, who's the true villain? And these types of stories work well when you have someone to root against or you want someone to cheer your heroes on for. And I know that's a bit cliche in many regards.
Well, it's storytelling. That's just
it's cleaner storytelling, I suppose. And cleaner's not always good. I mean, you can have a really crazy story and it work. But for these types of movies, there's going to be a lot of things going on, a lot of first meetings and those types of things going on. So do we have someone to root against? Is it clear that they're the villain, or is it going to take us on this journey? So I'm not worried so much as I'm just curious how it's going to work. And I hope it doesn't lose the audience as it goes through that path, and I'm okay if something wonky happens within all of that, but Dryden Voss looks like the villain, but Enfys Nest at the very least looks like a competitor maybe. So maybe not the true villain. So again, not really clear who the villain is here yet. And so I'm curious to see where that actually lands.
Yeah. And that I would say that's probably been by design. I don't think they've been trying to give us too much. Sure. I think they want us to kind of keep us on our toes and think about who we should be rooting for and or against. And I think that's kind of the theme of the movie, given what we have seen so far. And then he's got two other questions here. Let's table the weekend numbers one for last, because it kind of leads into our wrap up stuff. But the next question was, is Star Wars trying to connect the dots too much a la Marvel? And if so, do you think there will be a mess to clean up later? And I did paraphrase this one. He gave a whole lot of context and exposition leading up into the question. But, again, the question's really focused around, are they taking the Marvel approach? And if they do, is it going to be messy later? I don't know that they are doing that just yet. I do know, and I'm not going to say one way or the other. I think for all of these movies, though, if they start going down that path, I would say I'd trust them to get out of it cleanly enough. Just because they do, again, I'll go back to the story group. I think they do a pretty good job of keeping things in line. They're certainly involved with creating a lot of the ancillary content that's not directly, impacting in the movie. And it sounds like the process that they have is, anytime a writer has questions about stuff, they go check in and just say, hey, what am I breaking here? Am I going to be stepping on anything by doing this? It seems like that. I've heard many stories about that from all of the directors, even Rian Johnson, who had pretty much free reign to kind of do whatever he wanted. I think he was still there's still a box, right? And they still try to play within the context of the box and continuity of that box. So I think we're okay. I think it may get a little hairy at times if they do start going down this route. But I fully expect it, because it's Disney and Lucasfilm and the story group and all those guys, that I think they'll do the right thing, and I think they'll stay clean.
Well, I think the one thing we can always relax and lean back on is that it's all from a certain point of view anyway. I know, right? That's our default answer if we have to undo it.
Welcome to episode 232 once again.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about connecting the dots. It's more, I think we've been concerned about them just filling in too many of the stories that we're not sure we want to hear. And again, I was kind of on board with that problem with Solo, but now that I'm starting to see it and get this feel for where they're actually going with it, and then the cast and the story that looks like they're going to tell, I want to see where it goes. So I think some of it, this is the first movie where we've got a character that we've loved for a really long time and see him in a little different take. And so I'm curious to see where they go with it. Rogue One was definitely an in-between type of, or really a lead-up movie. And so it was curious to see how that one went. But now we're in this is a different league, I think. And when we get to some of our estimates here, our guesses, I think we're going to see some of that too. But so I am curious to see where it goes. I don't know that there's going to be a mess to clean up, because they are keeping these relatively isolated in the timeline and then where they fit. And we're not going to have a later movie to have to go in like a much further, like 10, 20, 30 years Han Solo movie, most likely, that's going to have to come back and say, oh, we got to fit in all these things we already learned. I don't think we're going to have to worry too much about that. They can really be more constrained with whatever they want to do in this movie and any potential sequels. And they know the original canon so well that I'm not too worried that they're going to go and break a lot of that. Because quite honestly, a lot of that was made up after the fact anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, it was all kind of retro stuff. So And all right, so let's do the last question, which was he says, care to venture a guess on opening weekend numbers? And we kind of had this set already as one of the last discussion points to maybe talk about box office estimates. Do you want to give them the disclaimer about our numbers as opposed to other folks?
Yeah.
here?
So Joe Estenson was the Nostradamus of whatever fortune teller you want to have. He was a master at predicting box office numbers.
I think he was an inside guy.
He put so much work into going back and looking and reviewing and researching. It was one of his interests. And if you go back, like leading up to this episode, I went back and listened to the guys for Force Awakens, Last Jedi, and for Rogue One, and it was eerie how on the money he was with some of those. But the amount of effort he put into doing it. So we are not going to be that good. So.
Right. That was the good news. The bad news is you have us. So.
You're right. Yeah. So you have the great fortunes of knowing that we're going to guess. and yep. we've thought about it a little bit. We've looked at how it compares with some of their other Star Wars movies. And now that we have some, and these are all bundled together, we don't have to really worry too much about, inflation or number of theaters or anything like that, because the number of theaters for these are all pretty similar, about 4,100, 4,200 screens type of thing. So we're assuming Solo is going to be on the same type of scale here. But on to the question though. So what do I think?
All right. So what do you think? So let's take opening weekend. Right. What's your projection for opening weekend?
So the official projections were 165 to 175.
Yep.
So I was more in the 150 bucket, but I'm actually going to go high now. I'm going to say 180 million for opening weekend US.
Wow, 180?
I think so. When I look back at what Rogue One did, and I factored in the popularity of this character and the energy they've got around this movie, I did a complete 180, and I'm gonna have it hitting 180.
Wow, this is like the Price is Right, where that one guy comes in, strong after his first one. Okay, for me, I've got some dice here. I'm shaking these up, and I'm rolling. It looks like I'm going to come in at $162 million. I think the projection was right compared to Rogue One. I think the only thing that may hurt it is you do have a select group of folks that are, how do I say this? So like for The Last Jedi, you've got a lot of people that have a general interest in Star Wars, but they're not going to go see a Star Wars movie unless it's like really blowing up, really amazing, getting great reviews, that kind of thing, right? And I think for this movie, I think it's going to cater to the fan base. I think we're going to get a lot of the humor. We're going to get a lot of the flavor from all the old Star Wars movies. I think that's a lock and secure. I think you got those guys going in. What I don't know that you're going to get, given the reviews that are coming out right now, again, not saying it's negative reviews, they're actually positive reviews, but it's not enough, I don't think, to really kind of pull in or give it the extra that I think they're hoping for.
I'm going to say that. How much stock do you put into because I believe this was the number 2 best-selling pre-sale tickets. Who had that? Was that Fandango or somebody else that announced that?
Yeah, they released it. Yeah, they did.
Do you put much stock into that?
Yeah, I don't know. No, not really. I think to me, it just seems like it's timing more than anything. Depending on when you release a movie, people start buying pre-tickets because they all want to go as a big group or whatever else. Summertime, and I never really looked into what pre-sales look like for summertime movies as opposed to winter movies or spring movies or whatever that is. So I don't know that I put too much stock into it. My estimations are really just based on taking the initial projections and accounting for that. I think it's going to take a hit because we're not at 90% Rotten Tomatoes.
Right.
And I think there's too many people that are just so hyper focused on that stupid score that they're not going to go out and see it more than maybe once, or they're going to go in there with preconceived notions that this movie was just okay. I'll pay my $10 for the first showing, but I'm not going to do repeat showings. And I think that's where it probably won't pull in the numbers that they're probably hoping for on the best.
So why don't you take us into your full domestic total then?
So I got domestic at 525. I went and did foreign at 575 because you can't get to the worldwide until you kind of figure out, right. So I just subtracted that. So 525 domestic, 575 for foreign. They seem to do like these movies more. And then worldwide, I've got it at 1.1 billion, which would put it in line with it would put it over Rogue One. Doesn't really come close to like The Last Jedi. Well, that's not too far away. But yeah, I'm saying 1.1 for worldwide.
So we're actually pretty close. So I put my domestic at 600 and I put foreign at 600 as well. So 1.2 total. So total, we're pretty well close, because that was the same thing I looked at. Was this is going to be, I'm going to put it below Last Jedi. Again, saga film, I'm expecting to be a higher, better performer, but better than Rogue One because we have the recognition of the characters. And I expected foreign to do a little bit better because we've got pretty people. And so with Emilia Clarke and Alden Ehrenreich and Donald Glover, expect that to do well overseas. My domestic might be a little bit high. I really wiggled around, mostly in the 550 to 600 range. But again, I'm just giving it the benefit of the doubt that it's going to do better than Rogue One. And I keep pushing that. So if I'm going to do that for opening weekend, I have to go do that for domestic as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And we don't know what the word of mouth is going to be, right? You can have a movie that's sitting in, the 70s in Rotten Tomatoes, but word of mouth just keeps it going. It gives it the legs, right. And more people just keep going back for their first showing or repeat showings. And that certainly plays directly into that domestic figure.
If this thing hits $1 billion, so even if we're way off, but if this thing hits $1 billion, it still has to be considered a success, like a huge smashing success for what they're doing, right?
Right. No, I agree. And like I said, I think you can just go ahead and, write it in, the second and maybe third movies are a done deal at this point. Yep. So, but I guess we'll see. And then the last thing we have, and we're out of time, but, so we want to talk about maybe what character developments. You kind of had this originally. We moved to the bottom of the show, but you kind of had some final thoughts here about, what kind of character developments you would be interested in seeing, and then just kind of a fun topic. What any cameos that we'd be looking forward to seeing? So I'll let you kind of take it.
Right. We talked a little bit about the character developments already, and I think for me it's more the relationships. So I want to see Han and Londo. Wow,
Londo.
Han and Londo. So Han and Lando. Want to see how this thing works and how they get to where they're at, and why do they have this distance to him as well. And of course Han and Chewie. I want to see the rest of the crew. I want to know what's going on with Val. But it's really, to me, it's the movie's called Solo. We got to see how Han becomes the person he is, and how these relationships were started, and how they got to where they went, at least in pieces here. So that's the developments I'm looking for, really more the relationships more than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
As far as cameos, this is an interesting one. We've been kicking these around forever because there's always been rumors of Jabba and Boba Fett and whoever else. I think this is another ripe area for bounty hunters to make a general appearance, because at least in the EU, Han has always been synonymous with being hunted by a bounty hunter somewhere, one or another. And so this is another opportunity that we might see a few creep in here and there. And I kind of believe we will see either Jabba or Boba, maybe both. My money is more on Jabba, I think, than Boba.
Well, I will say, let me answer the last one first. As far as cameos go, I'm going to say that, yes, we are going to get cameos, but I won't say who or when or any of that stuff. So I think it is going to happen. I'm sorry, that is a little bit of a spoiler, but it is. And I won't say any more than that. As far as the character developments, apart from what we talked about, I guess my final things are and this is for, I guess, my final thoughts on the Solo movie. I would like to see the two aspects, I guess, are two characters we haven't talked about. The Falcon would be another one. I think we may get a character of the Falcon in this movie. I think it's going to be characterized. I think it's going to have a personality more than we have seen in the other movies, which may be a little weird because now, in the context of the full saga, we don't necessarily get that outside of it. It's a hunk of junk. And I think in The Last Jedi,
it's got 3 brains.
The Last Jedi novel,
it's got 3 brains.
It's got, I think wasn't The Last Jedi novel where they were talking about that?
I can't remember.
Now. Anyways, so we've gotten little bits and pieces of it, but it would be cool to have its own little persona in the movie and give it some more character. I just think that would be really meaningful, especially since, we know it goes all the way to The Last Jedi and it's got its legacy and all of its fame. I think this would be really cool to see.
That's a good point.
And then I guess the last thing I'd really would like to see is I want to see more of Chewie in this movie. I'm hoping it's more Chewie than Solo, I guess, to some extent. he just seems like a character that never got his share. He's never gotten his fair play, or and we're going to get an opportunity here where it's, he's going to have these isolated scenes, and we've seen that little headbutt thing they do. I don't know if that's, his wife or just a friend or whatever it is. But I really hope that we get a lot of character from Chewie here, more than we have in the past, because I think that would be really neat to see, especially again, putting all the movies in context. Would be nice.
I think you're right. I mean, seeing Chewie have that depth added to him will be a lot of fun. And so I'm definitely excited to see how they get to that moment and what that actually means. And then, potentially the separation aspect of it, and then why and how important that was, and or why it had to go that way. That's a great point. I can't believe I overlooked that. Great point.
Well, thank you. And any final thoughts before we close this one out?
No, super excited. Hope everybody sends us their feedback on what they're looking forward to most. Give us some of your estimates. I'm curious to see. I don't know. We won't do a squares game like the Super Bowl or anything like that, but it'd be fun to see if all the people guess just kind of who's the best at this. So it's probably not us. So, thanks for all the questions. They were amazing, and we certainly appreciate all the feedback that we're getting.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for coming through on the questions there. So here's all the disclaimer stuff. If you want to find us on Instagram, you can find us at the Cantina Cast, on Twitter at the Cantina Cast, Facebook / the Cantina Cast. If you'd like to send us an email, you can do so at cantinacastfanmail@gmail.com. You can rate us and review us on iTunes. We'd appreciate all the good feedback, and good reviews is always there. We're on Discord. We'll put a link in the show notes there for that. And if you'd like to help support the show, you can do so in two different ways. We've got a TeePublic site that's up. You can grab a t-shirt, a sticker, whatever else. Or if you'd like to be a Patreon member, Mike has just gone through, Mike and Jonesy have been putting a lot of work into revamping that. So I think you're going to be pretty excited to see what he's got planned coming up, a couple different tiers, and you can kind of donate some monthly money there. All of that goes to help keep the show going and keep the lights on, so to speak. So thank you so much for everybody that
we're going to have a new Canteen After Dark coming up really soon, where I believe Mike really wants to dig into some of that too. So Patreon members, be on the lookout for that. And if you're not one, consider it's only, I think, a couple of dollars for the Canteen After Dark show. So something to think about.
It's like $2. Yeah. And with that, I think we're going to end it. We will be back for episode 234. And that's going to be our reaction show. It's either going to be, so I'm going Thursday night. I think Jonesy's going Friday night. So sometime after that, very shortly after that, we'll rattle Mike's cage and get him to put all that together. But that'll be our next show.
I'll be there Thursday night. I'm just late. late. So
late showing. Yeah.
So hopefully Friday we'll get something recorded.
Yep. So that'll be our next show. So with that, we'll end it here. Thanks so much for all the feedback again. And we will see you guys after Solo premieres. Exciting. Take care.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.